Okay, we were in the middle of an explanation about how the hell we could have gone through this. Next step should be obvious. The trolley was pushed slightly, rolling forward together with the victim on it. Whoosh. Oh! Here's what this meant from Mr. Maxwell's perspective. It looked like the victim was slowly flying off the ground. Afterwards, the rope was loosened or cut, and the cross fell down into the basement. The shards we found there are the result of that. Chances are it was also the shattering noise. Oh, that fits. So it wasn't my bottle after all. Afterwards, the hole just had to be reverted to its original state by canceling the spell. Again, possible with at least 2 of the spells here. There you have it. A perfect alternate explanation for the crime. Which is backed up by lots of the evidence, too. It certainly fits. It's still kind of whack, but unbelievable. On the surface, this theory is complete madness. However, I can't deny this would explain a lot of what we found at the scene. Most importantly, it would seem to make sense of Mr. Maxwell's testimony. In that sense, it is certainly supported by circumstantial evidence. That cross-shaped trace in particular seems to support something like a hole, but I cannot believe Mr. Desby would have missed such a giant trace on the ceiling of the basement. Which there should have been if the effect had reached through it entirely. Oh. True. He probably should not have missed that. However, keep in mind that there was a giant curtain covering the ceiling of the basement. Oh. This covered a major part of the ceiling from view. Somehow, how do I not remember that? And there sadly was no time to investigate things that thoroughly. Oh. Damn, that story's pretty crafty, I'll give you that. You go into some lengths there with that big mirror part. I get the gist of it. I don't think you can use it against me. My apologies, but even with your explanation, a plain man like me is unfortunately still forced to believe in vampires due to a few inconsistencies. Inconsistencies? Figures I've forgotten some things. My mind was a mess a few moments ago. Yeah, this dude's got it right. This won't cut it. So let us just cut it down right here. Rebuttal. Vampires have no mirror image, oh boy. Even if we grant all of what you just said, there is still one major problem. Damn right, and it's about the weapon. I didn't see any weapon or person approach the victim at all, reflection or not. Yeah. And there was also that thing about no spell traces on the guy, right? In addition, it does not sound like you found any blood in the basement. That's right. No matter how you cut it, there should have been a lot of blood then. Hold on, what kind of testimony is this? Fool. This is an argument. Your own fault for leaving a mess. So, should I approach this differently? Well reasoned, Champion Obvious. Any fool can see that this is Soviet Russia. What? Please, less cryptic. I'm new to this. Look at it. This time they pointed out the problems in your theory. In other words, looking for contradictions here would be #redundant. Instead, you should try to focus on fixing your stuff. Oh, I see. That's more helpful. Curious. So this time I need to fix contradictions instead of pointing them out. I'll have to find explanations or show alternatives, that sort of thing. The witnesses have made valid points. Thank you for participating in this discussion. No problem. A legitimate business owner does what he can. What can I do? You peeps are just hopeless. It would be most fortunate if we could determine whether this theory is possible or not. If it isn't, we shall look into the matter after the trial instead. And hide the truth. Don't even play dumb. Well, better than twisting it to pin this on us common folks. Well, you picked the wrong scapegoat, lawyer. I know how to fight back. Well, let's see how that goes then. Yes, let's. Okay. What might that be? Are you doubting my theory? My apologies. You can very much trust me when I say I want to believe it. After all, anything is better than my own dreadful conclusion. But I cannot ignore what I saw. What you saw? I think I explained the flying bit. Yes, and it is possible what I saw was a mere reflection. As I've stated before, the figure did seem recognizable, but faint. Regardless, it does not explain another part of what I saw. After all, a mirror would have reflected anything that happened near the victim, too. And that leads to a problem.
Hold it!
Oh, this flows into itself rather nicely. Let me just say that I didn't really get to the weapon yet. Regardless, as the crime didn't actually happen in midair. There should be way less of a problem there? You know, after you went silent for 10 minutes, I thought you'd have figured this out. Like, I'm impressed you were able to think of something to explain this at all. But if you're pinning this on me, it better be good. My apologies, but I have to agree. I do not wish for a person to become a scapegoat. That would just be playing right into the hands of the real culprit. I know what you have been saying is wrong anyway, because I didn't do it. I'm not getting you to accept that. Looks like common sense ain't enough here. No, it's time to cut you down with the logic. Anything but the logic. Oh god, the logic.
Hold it!
And that's a problem how? Trying to be funny, huh? You know damn well why this won't cut it. The victim was actually lying. And really reflected. My plain understanding that someone would still have to bend over him and use the blade. My apologies, but that is not what I saw. Damn right. And you know the facts. He was definitely cut with that blade. Was he, though?
Objection!
It was the only object we found with the victim's blood on it. Nothing else would have even been capable of severing a person's neck that cleanly. That's troublesome, then. Any ideas, Ray? Look into the mirror, what do you see? Well, it's definitely a reflection. That's right. But do you know what it proves? It proves I'm not a vampire. Well, that's good to know. Thank you, Ray. How was that related? Easy, vampires have no reflection. They're invisible in the mirror world. Oh, okay. So what you're saying is that I've made vampires actually more plausible now. Good job, champ. Well, that wasn't helpful. Let's see what I can do here. I suppose I could show an alternate weapon. What if such a thing actually exists, though? Oh, no need to rush. Let's get back to that. Let's not make any hasty claims. Got nothing? No surprises, man. No spell traces on the man, so nothing magical decapitated him. I guess that's really good for you, considering your spell. It's just the facts, man. No need to badger me. Can't have you forget that you can't explain this away, with me parting his neck. I suppose no matter how you look at it, that would have left traces. Which is a shame, because it would have been a really good explanation for this. See? In the end, you're just like the rest. The moment you learn what my spell is, you judge and think I'm behind everything. Treat me like some ticking bomb. I was right to keep it secret. A defense is advised to adherence to the facts. I wasn't planning on arguing that point, though the facts do speak against him in several regards. Unless there's some trick. I do not think he could have cut the victim's neck with his spell. Do you have any clues for an alternate possibility? I don't know. No blood in the basement. True. Was perfectly clean. Well, clean would be an overstatement considering the shards, but we did not find any blood, I guess. My apologies, but in that case, it would not have been the true crime scene. Even a plain man like me understands that much. Well, maybe there was a reason we didn't find it. Ah, good luck. You can't hide this one with a curtain, too. That's right, no matter how you cut it, there should have been a lot of blood there. Alright, seems like the same point for both people. No matter how you cut it, I guess that would be true. A decapitation would have led to massive blood loss, regardless of the method. Leaving behind a completely clean basement would have been impossible. Nor could it have been reduced to an amount the police would have missed. It should prove that the victim was not decapitated there. I have to be careful if I want to agree with that. So it might be pretty dangerous for my theory. Oh, we can agree, we can disagree, or we can just not commit to anything. Well, actually, we're going to save, because this seems... What we'd be agreeing with is that the victim could not be decapitated, could not have been decapitated down there. Sure, let's agree. Yeah, you're probably right. You weren't expecting to get away with this, did you? Not really. If you agree, this proves that the victim was not killed down there. And your theory, which hinged on the victim being reflected from the basement, falls apart. It's a fundamental contradiction, I would say. Not necessarily. Alright, how do I talk my way out of this one? Good question. Are you suggesting your theory could still work? Well, maybe it just needs a minor tweak. Nonsense! We won't possibly resolve this if the victim was not killed down there. What if the culprit used something? Give it up, that's just sad. My apologies, but even a plain man like me could bluff better than that. They used something else. Something that wasn't the victim. Clearly the reflection still works this way. My apologies, but what I saw was definitely a human. We found zero evidence for anything that could have stood in for a human at the scene. Well, we do have another human. The human would, of course, have lost a lot of blood, victim or not. Unless you could show what the culprit could have used to avoid blood, your theory falls apart. Avoid blood? Oh, the mysterious victim has a complete lack of blood mentioned in here. She could not have died that recently.
Take that!
Yeah. You really shouldn't have ignored this very important aspect. Because a good friend is going to explain this discrepancy. What? What's that corpse have to do with anything? This corpse has some very relevant properties. For example, the fact that it's been dead for a while. It was concluded due to the total absence of blood. You don't mean to say. I think I am. This was the real corpse Mr. Maxwell saw. With this corpse, there would have been no blood in it. No blood if it was decapitated.
Objection!
You are aware of what you're saying, correct? What definition could this corpse... Does this corpse look decapitated to you? We technically can't even see the face. I certainly hope you're not going to question our police work. Nah, it was kind of rushed for understandable reasons, but they wouldn't lie. Doesn't mean they're not competent, right? Did I nail it? Did I? In that case, you have merely replaced one problem with another. It's true that this body would not have left any blood if decapitated. Yet now you have to ask yourself, how is this corpse's head still attached to the body? My apologies, but I quite literally saw the body parts flying apart. Ooh, was this body tested for spell traces? That's fine, I'll explain it. My hunch is right. This drastically changes the circumstances. The body was not the victim's, but this... We're no longer limited by certain information. Let's not forget that regardless of this, the other problem is yet to be resolved. How is this corpse killed without any weapon getting visibly close to him? And how does it now look like the head is still attached? Given those two clear contradictions, you should consider discarding your theory. I'll do something even better. I'll resolve both of those contradictions simultaneously. He snapped. Sorry to break it to you. You're going to do what? A defense is full of admirable confidence. 2 issues. Resolved by presenting a single thing. I'll call this technique the combined present. He really has embraced the dramatic nature of his profession now. But you're still terrible at naming these things. I'll take concise labeling over sounding cool. My apologies, but it might be better to stop. Let the guy embarrass himself. Very well then, if that is what you claim you can do. Go ahead, present something. Something that explains both how that corpse was decapitated without a visible weapon, and why the head is still attached to the body. Both these issues are explained by using this. You are not off the hook this time, Karen Cat.
Take that!
This suddenly becomes very simple without the victim. As has been pointed out a few times, we don't have many options when it comes to decapitations. The only thing that comes to mind are the blade and Mr. Cat's spell. Out of those, only Mr. Cat's spell has the power to reattach things. I think you know what I'm getting at, Mr. Cat. Mr. Cat is the one behind this show.
Objection!
Hell yeah. How often do we have to repeat it? The spell traces confirm that. Wait.
Objection!
Spell traces? You mean the lack of them on the victim? We're not talking about the victim right now. We're talking about this lady. You know, the lady from the police preferred to mostly ignore because it wasn't their business. If I recall correctly, Mr. Despery couldn't bear to look at her for more than a second. In other words, there hasn't even been a proper examination of this corpse. Face it, your men were too confident they had the right man. Ahem. I'll have to give you this one, friend. After I had been told it had been dead for days, we did not bother with the body. It did not appear relevant and wasn't part of our jurisdiction. Looks like that was a mistake, huh? Don't blame yourself too much. You didn't have much time to investigate. At any rate, what we don't know now for sure, this leaves open the possibility that there were spell traces on that body's neck. God damn it! What is your problem with me? Detective, you did at least check all of the walls of the building and the surroundings, correct? Anything on the walls would have definitely caught my eyes. Unless it was covered with a curtain like the ceiling of the basement, of course. That's quite fine. I think it's time to put a stop to the defense's wild theories. I'll admit that I chose to ignore the most blatant issue. After all, it appeared to have some merit in the facts and could have granted us new insight. Accusing this man of the murder, at least, is out of the question. I vouch for his innocence with truthful melody. He truly does not know what the defense is talking about. Well, it had to come back to that sooner or later. Damn. One moment, my child. The defense has granted permission for continuation regardless of your assertion. Yet, Your Honor, but truthful melody confirms. A consideration of truthful melody is to be suspended for the moment. Well, why? Wow. All of this definitely made him lose some points with the Great Guardian, didn't it? We've certainly proven that truthful melody isn't 100% infallible.
Objection!
Which is a huge boon. Well, it's all the same. Even if we are just to consider the facts and simple logic, your case is weak. After all, your theory is both impossible and does not change who the culprit is. Oh no. He's objecting with two issues simultaneously. Don't tell me this is going to be a combined objection. Linus, no. After all, nothing about Mr. Cat pulling the prank necessitates he also killed the victim. This openly contradicted, in fact. There was clearly still a victim to kill when the defendant showed up. Secondly, this whole complicated setup would have required Mr. Cat to be inside the building. He needed a line of sight with the corpse, cut his neck and reattach it, correct? He'd also have needed to move the trolley in the first place. Presumably reposition the corpse later. I'll admit that if we are to disregard truthful melody, he does not have much of an alibi. I should still leave him inside the building when the defendant and Miss Porter arrived. As we've just established, no further spell traces were found on the walls. Mr. Cat chose to escape through a wall by breaking it and fixing it, that would have left traces. Traces he could not have hidden with a curtain or any sort of visual obstruction. After all, you cannot put something in front of traces on the inside after leaving. Well, shit. That's a very convincing counter. Before you suggest the opposite, let me remind you the house's walls were mostly barren anyway. The curtain in the basement is more or less the sole exception. Which brings me to my question. How did Mr. Cat leave the scene in your theory? Keep in mind that Miss Porter saw him arrive from the left. Now, you could disregard her testimony as well, but there's no reason to do so, right? There's always a reason to disregard Talia, but... The defendant acknowledges the problem and the testimonies. Better not just ignore the results of our investigation. The sign of a poor scientist, my standards are higher than that. Looks like you couldn't avoid the locked room after all. Keys, anyone? But there are no doors. This problem is purely based on testimony. Champs don't fret the small details. It's still a guy who could not get out of a place. I don't see how that should still be called a locked room. Shush! Do you want this to be considered a good case or not? There's some kind of go locked room or go home ideology? Well, I guess that leaves you with some explaining to do. Quite right. The defendant did not see Mr. Cat leave, albeit his investigation was not thorough. Miss Porter's testimony, however, is harder to be ignored. From just before seeing the defendant slice through the victim, she kept constant surveillance of the area. After witnessing the killing, she saw Mr. Cat approach from the left. Only after that did she see him enter the building briefly, just to run away again. And go further and include that she investigated the building after this and found nobody. Not that you're in any position to change your culprit anyway. My question is, how did Mr. Cat leave the building without being seen? One step at a time, please. Certainly a solid point. You have to consider each step carefully. When did he leave? Which exit did he use? This mustn't contradict the testimonies. But I'm not sure how Talia wouldn't have seen him. There has to be some trick here. Let's just start with the first point. The exit the culprit used. Only one way he could have left, and it's... the door, the window, a hidden passage. Actually, he never left. It's gotta be the door. He just walked out the front door. How else would he leave? Very well, when exactly did he do this? Oh. I obviously walked out. So, before the defendant encountered the victim, before the defendant entered the building, after Miss Porter entered the building, after Miss Porter left the... Oh boy. Before the defendant entered the building... It does seem to follow, considering he arrived from the street on the left then. Of course, this runs into a major issue with both Miss Porter's and the defendant's testimony. The defendant had a clear view on the door for most of that time. Miss Porter would have also most likely have seen anyone passing from right to left. Care to explain how our friend was apparently as good as invisible? Go ahead. Try to point it out on the map if you want, by all means. I'll present what Mr. Cat used to remain absolutely undetected. Be my guest. What am I even supposed to show here? Good question. I mean, we could try and show it on the map. Well, maybe after you got out of the door, you hit here. Really? This is it?
Take that!
It was hiding right here. Am I seeing this right? Because if I am sane, I'm suggesting your culprit stood right where the victim was. Sure? That's exactly what I'm saying. Because, you see, that victim wasn't the victim at all. Oh! Huh? You realize the problem with this, don't you? You're proposing this man was cut in half by the defendant. I wager to say he would not have been standing right. He would not be standing here right now if that was the case. Well, the truth is, I mean, Nils only testified to holding the blade out, and then suddenly, he being dead. Maybe clever spell use. Damn. Real clever spell use. He wasn't actually cut in half by the defendant. What kind of denial is this? It was a witness who saw it. Even the defendant's testimony itself can be taken as proof that somebody was cut in half there. Don't get me wrong. Never denied he was cut in half. It just wasn't done by the defendant. That's holy shit. Don't mean to say. Sure am. This is what really cut him in half. Fucking hell, we're getting a lot of mileage out of this spell.
Take that!
Using your spell to its fullest potential, aren't you? It must have been some desperate plan, but it's the only explanation. After all, the person was cut in the completely wrong spot for it to be the Oh! Yeah. Actual death was decapitation. Talia mentioned he was cut in half through the middle. I found no corpse that was cut through the torso like Miss Porter described. And why? Because you were the one who rushed at the defendant, and then, just before you came into contact with the blade, you cut yourself in half. Jesus. Your upper body flew to the left, past the defendant, and you quickly reverted unlimited parting. Which means your lower body quickly caught up and reattached itself, leaving you alive. Goddamn. What? What? What madness is this supposed to be? Timed well enough, you could have avoided any lasting injuries. I suppose it might have resulted in some heavy blood loss, but, well, it just meant you had to deal with some low blood pressure for a while. Come to think of it, you seemed a little, out of it yesterday, didn't you? What are you trying to say? I was just tired, man. Of course I'm even more tired of this stuff that you're spouting right now. You seemed a little more than just tired. You were basically falling asleep constantly. This happens to be a common symptom of hypotension. I mean, low blood pressure. Well, aren't you the expert? That ain't proving anything. I do consider myself an expert of some kind. The nature of some of my experiments require me to look into these sorts of things. Psst, May, I have a new theory. You don't mean the line is vampire theory? Are there any famous vampire scientists? Oh, that was me. Not really. But don't feel safe. I know I'm on the right track to discover your secret identity. Sure am trembling.
Objection!
Please postpone your internal discussion and focus on the problem at hand. The court cannot accept this theory due to a major problem. I hope you haven't forgotten basic facts of the case, like the blade. This happened to have the victim's blood on it. I can explain that. The victim was killed way before this. Due to the darkness, the defendant didn't see the dead body in the corner of the place. The only one who did was Miss Porter, who specifically looked for it due to what she had witnessed. The defendant must have also missed the blood that was already on the blade due to the darkness. I take no issue with that part, aside from the fact that I spent most of the trial attempting to determine the true victim out of two options. And then I come along and claim that both of them were fake. What's really important is the blood that wasn't found on the blade. Yeah, good point. blood expert only saw the victim's blood on this weapon. According to your theory, there should have been some of Mr. Cat's blood on this. Granted, the defendant washed off all the blood that got on him, so he could not check that. This weapon was left at the crime scene, and there's no well nearby. Jesus. That was unfortunate. So how could Mr. Cat have erased his blood from this in any amount that got on the ground? Erasing blood. I have to pull out some crazy science here. Is there anything I have learned about that could just erase blood? Is there? There is stinger blood, or stinger poison, that reacts with liquid blood. Is that convincing enough to actually be the answer? Well, technically, it just needs to make it unrecognizable to Mr. Claret, which is an important difference. For example, if it was me, I could combine the blood with something else. This wouldn't get rid of it, but the result might not be considered blood anymore. Since spell definitions are strict, this would mean he would not be able to spot any color. Come to think of it, didn't Mr. Claret say something curious about the blade back then? Eh? Still, I feel like something was a little off about the taste. Off? Might regret asking. It was definitely blood, but there was a weird bitterness to it, like it was mixed with something else. He said that, didn't he? Still, something mixed with blood that doesn't make it blood anymore? Might just have heard about such a thing. Oh, the defense is ready to account for this discrepancy. This could have been used to get rid of blood, or make it unrecognizable as such. It's gotta be the Outcast report. Let's take a look at this document. At the poison section, of course. The only really interesting one, honestly. There's one mentioned here that sounds rather relevant. Relying on unidentified poisons again? Well, fortunately, we have this report. Thanks to you, if I recall. Boy, I've been in this business for years. Everything here is happening thanks to me. One of your few redeeming qualities, actually being useful somehow. The previous instance already heavily suggested the culprit had access to these. So it's not out of the question. He applied another one here. What I'm talking about is the one that reacts with liquid blood, of course. Chemical reaction, for those unaware. It's not unlike combining two things. Well, the relevant part is that the output is generally something new. Put it simply, if something reacts with blood, the result is something new. Something that is no longer blood, at least. So they're basically saying that they used this substance to alter the blood. I have no idea what the result looks like, of course. It might still be visible, but the bottom line is that Mr. Claret would not have seen it colored, as it is technically no longer blood. A plain man like me is overwhelmed by this amount of science. Isn't this still problematic, though? Shouldn't this have erased the victim's blood on the blade as well, if applied? Good point. One with a possible explanation. The key fact here is that the victim was killed earlier than any of this happened. Shortly after the defendant resumed waiting at the corner after the scream, I guess. Some more time probably passed after this before he actually witnessed events. Now let's add a little more science, shall we? The keyword in this report is that the poison reacts with liquid blood. Oh, instead of dried blood. Basically, once the blood stops being a liquid, it might not react anymore. From my own research, I know blood takes about 10 to 15 minutes to coagulate. Or in layman's terms, to dry. Well, not fully dry, but at least turns from mostly liquid into a mostly gel-like substance. Chances are decent it is no longer receptive to the poison in that state. So basically, since the victim's blood had already dried somewhat, Mr. Cat's blood was still mostly fresh at the time. This poison was applied. Only most of Mr. Cat's fresh liquid blood reacted, while the victim's blood stayed behind. Mr. Cat returned briefly to apply this after everyone was gone. It would have erased the trace. I'll shake you due to the fact we do not have the actual access to this poison. I can't exactly deny it completely after granting the previous instance. Oh, hello. You're all useless. I should have known the prosecutor ain't got what it takes. But you know, I've been paying close attention to this mess. I'm sure you have. I don't think you can trick me. There's still lots of shaky points with your story. Looks like in the end, it's the same as usual. If you want a job done properly, you gotta do it yourself. Well, it's the most responsible thing to do. You think this is funny, don't you? Well, let's see if you still think that after I cut your brilliant theory into tiny bits. Oh fuck. Lots of rebuttaling. Oh boy! 1. How did I even cut the damn rope? 2. Where'd that rope go? Why did nobody find it? 3. Gate records show I was back before the kid. 4. How could I have even known about that poison? 5. How did I get confused with the victim? 6. What the hell would be my motive for this murder? All good points. That's quite a few complaints you have there. I'm not inefficient like a lot of you. That prosecutor had, like, what? Only one complaint when there's so many problems? Better just cut to the chase and shut you up. Not like that's gonna happen. I know ya. Of course. I'll give you an answer to each of these. Called it. I think I'm gonna go down easy. Your nonsense about being the killer simply won't cut it. Let's sort this out. If you're not, I can see why you'd be mad. I'm pretty sure it's you, though. Time to do this argument thing again. Or counter-argument. Punch, counter-punch. Cut the damn rope. Well, rope was found in pieces. Do you mean the rope that held the giant glass mirror? Man, is there any other rope? Of course I mean that one. Where's the problem? Cutting seemed to come naturally to you. Same excuse again, huh? Well, ain't that easy. I would have been in the cellar in your theory. Move that other corpse and split his neck and... yeah? Merritt fell right after that, according to you. How did I even see the rope? It was a really long rope that went all the way to the basement.
Objection!
Rejected. We would have found more traces similar to the one on the window then. The rest of the house wasn't particularly less full of dirt. Yeah, that won't cut it. That rope was fixed somewhere on that top floor. Fine. But you only really needed to look up through the hole. Spot the rope, split it with your spell, run away real quick. Nope. Definitely works, though. It doesn't. Listen to me, man. How'd I see the rope? It was dark outside, remember? Okay, but if it ran against the surface of the glass... Oh shit, there's white on it. Like white paint. Looking at that description again. And there'd have been a faint shadow in that reflection. If that plain dude didn't see that, then you can't say that I did. And just like that, you're out of ideas, huh? So by the way, you could have made sure to see the rope. How did he see a rope in the dark? There's something that might explain it. I feel like there was something curious in the evidence. Okay, let's just push through, see what he has to say about all of these. There's no problem here. All you had to do was use your spell to destroy it. You really think I would have had the time to do that? Well, alternatively, you just took it with you and did it later. In fact, we still found a little piece of it in front of your house supports that. So you're saying I had the time to go upstairs and collect it? Possible. Puts me on a pretty tight schedule there, don't you think? It's not like we have an exact timetable. Miss Porter witnessed the victim getting cut only moments after what Mr. Maxwell saw. As both recalled the gunshot, not much time could have been between these two events. In other words, your culprit would have already been fully occupied by quickly transporting the body to the ground floor and shooting it. It is an absolutely valid assumption that he did not have any time to go upstairs. Yeah! What about that other place, huh? Other piece? Oh yeah. You said that rope was spanned across the street and then cut, didn't you? That leaves the damn thing in two pieces. Oh. Again, the witness has a point. He could not have retrieved the other piece either. We found no visible access to the house on the other side. Well, that doesn't mean it was never accessible. While true, the witness did clearly not have the time to seal access to it that night. This would have required dealing serious damage to the building. Before you suggest he used his spell, I remind you there were no traces near said building. Alright, I'll accept that he could not have retrieved the piece of rope in that house. But it's inconsequential, as we couldn't access that house either. As long as the piece remained inside, it wouldn't be found. Well, aren't you a smart one? Let me give you some mechanical knowledge on this, alright? You might not know this if you're always staying in your lab, but if you cut a rope like that, it doesn't magically do what you want and vanish into the building. Part of it would still hang out the window. Well, did you see any rope hanging out of that window? I do not recall that, no. There you have it. That part I could not have gotten rid of. Wait, this isn't necessarily true. Instead of the rope merely being attached to something fixed, the rope could have been attached to some weight. What? I suggested it was attached to some piano now? I couldn't have lifted that. Or could you? Knew that was coming. If something that heavy fell down all of a sudden, don't you think people would have heard it? Well, it fell at the same time as the giant cross, and the sound would have been masked. Or maybe it wasn't that heavy after all. Well, either way, I could not have retrieved at least one piece. Well, that's a vital point. How could he have gotten his hands on that rope? He picked it up before leaving, he picked it up later, or someone else removed it. I'm gonna say he picked it up before leaving. I'm just gonna say that. He must have taken it before leaving. Just went over how he would not have had the time to go upstairs. Sure, but what if the rope fell down? It fell down, most likely. Fell down. What are you trying to suggest? Well, something like I just suggested for the other part of the rope. The floor below the topmost one didn't even exist anymore due to giant holes. Heck, there are even holes in the top floor, albeit smaller. In other words, the rope could have been tied to some object below the floor. It didn't even have to be a heavyweight, it just had to be larger than one of the holes. And the whole setup could have been held up by the floors, on both sides like that. Once the rope is cut, of course, it all falls down, either to vanish, or be ready to be picked up.
Objection!
I do not seem to recall there being a suitable object for this on the ground floor. Well, since it wasn't that heavy an object, he might have taken it with him. Not accepted. The defendant did not see the victim carrying anything with him. Considering the object still had to be of a certain length or size, this is unlikely. Before you say I used my spell, it actually ain't as quick as you think. The larger an object, the more time I'd need to split the thing. Really didn't have much time there to make it small enough. He is speaking the truth. In other words, the object would have needed to still be inside the house. Well, since it was not necessarily heavy, it might have been moved to some degree, but definitely could not have taken it with him. So a long or moderately big object you could tie a rope around. Something like that present. Long or moderately big object to tie a rope around. Well, my first thought would be the chair, but since they kind of dropped the clue of the quote-unquote victim would have been holding it, there was a thing that the victim was holding. I'll show you a suitable object from the court record. They saw the victim holding the shotgun. Simple stuff. You really had to utilize this gun, as the gun was both heavy and long enough. If wedged just underneath the floor, the construction would hold. Since you only shot with it after it had already fallen down, there's no problem. Except it is possible and non-contradictory. You actually found an excuse again. Ooh, you can have this one. But you know I ain't done yet. It still won't cut it. Okay, I think we just need to do these one after the other, since some of them will be broken just by pressing. So let's present the rope here. The rope in question gives us the answer. Huh? That little piece of trash? Yes, this little piece has to be discovered in front of your house. I hope you're not going to claim that makes decisive proof. Of course not. There's no way to link it to you, or the case that simply. But its properties still reveal how you could have seen the rope. As you can see, one of the ends of this piece has been colored with white or something. If you marked a small spot on the rope white, it might have been visible enough in the dark. Chances are you used fluorescent paint. All you needed was to see a tiny spot after all. Mr. Maxwell was too focused on what he saw to notice something that small, or mistook it for a star. You, on the other hand, knew what you were looking for. I think this clears up this issue. Guess I got no choice except to give this one up. But I ain't done yet. It's still not cutting it. Okay. Oh wow, so it literally deletes the statements out once we break them. Nice! Wait, the gate records show I was back before the kid. I'm not sure what the issue is. None of this would have required you to stick around for much longer. Oh yeah? What about the whole applying poison to stuff? Considering Miss Porter was occupying the house for a while, he may have a point. While Miss Porter could have taken her time and still be back fairly soon, this does not apply to Mr. Cat. Oh, so that's all? Because there's an easy way he could have still gotten back fairly quickly. Inconceivable! If he wasted so much time, there should have been no way for him to catch up with the defendant. Normally, no. But if he used this, he could have gotten back significantly fast. Oh, the biker that we've...
Take that!
I can't believe this is actually coming in handy. I'll tell you, there's actually some kind of law to raise techniques. Everything gets resolved if you just take a look at this. And what is that contraption exactly? How the hell would that thing help me? Right. I guess this is a rather ancient vehicle. You can clearly spot the wheels at least. Basically. Well, there's some way to get it to roll if you're sitting on it. I assure you, it could get pretty fast in theory. That's nice and all, but I have no idea how to use something like that. He truthfully doesn't, which leaves us at a bit of an impasse. Oh, Descree? Sorry for interrupting, but I think I'll be able to resolve this problem. Resolve? As in prove whether he used it or not? You got it. I have some info the court isn't aware of yet. You see, when the whole question of whether the crime happened in the east or west came up, I sent out word to have our footprint expert investigate. Footprint expert? Someone who can identify footprints easily via spell or something? Well, that's more or less what her spell helps with. Though she still has to do most of the tracking normally. She was sent to investigate the plain between here and the west ruins more thoroughly. As you may recall, there was some pretty heavy rainfall early in the night of the crime. This left the ground muddy enough so that anyone would have left significant traces in the plains. I see. Since it's dried up since then. Most likely did mess those prints up in the morning yesterday. Pretty much. Our prints were on the good old dry dirt, significantly less clear. Well, just before this hole got locked down, I received word of the results. I'm sorry, Linus. Your theory's no good. found the prints of 5 people heading west through those plains. They're who you'd expect them to be. The victim, the defendant, and the 3 witnesses. Oh, so you can identify them too? Pretty handy. Out of those, there were sets of 3 people heading back. These people were Niels Gickham, Damon Maxwell, and Karen Cat. The clever thing, really clever thing that someone pointed out in the comments with Damon Maxwell, which just really impressed me once they brought it up in the comments, and I googled it myself. I hadn't actually heard of it, but Maxwell's actual spell with altering the permeability of a wall, and specifically using it to let the heat out of something to cool it. It's specifically based on a thought experiment called Maxwell's Demon, which is literally a thought experiment meant to violate the laws of thermodynamics. It's just, holy shit, that's really clever. I love that. And just, all the spells in general are really clever, well thought out. Especially how they managed to do, literally, the mystery with Maxwell and Cat describing the exact same spell, but having their spell be completely different. That's just really cool. Everything that we've done with spells so far. Makes sense. Victim obviously did not return, and Miss Porter used her spell to get back. Troublesome. Sorry, but this means Mr. Cat returned by foot, not by some vehicle. About time things don't always work out in your favor. Well, this leaves me with a problem, then. Mr. Cat didn't have a way to return faster. Means he left more or less when he claimed he left. Does that leave him with an opportunity to apply the poison to the blade? Wait a second. Wasn't there a very easy opportunity for you to use that poison to erase your blood? There's an option here I just have to pick. I'm going to save the game. You really could have done it before leaving the house for the first time, when you witnessed the defendant, when the world exploded. Obviously when the world exploded. I'm not sure what drove me to have that thought. The problem should be obvious. The defense just penalized themselves. I didn't think you were into that stuff, Linus. Trust me, I observed this one. Don't give in to the angst. Let's just get back to my argument now. Okay. I assume it's when we witnessed the defendant? Nice job leading us astray, but I've seen through it. When you returned and witnessed the defendant, you had a very easy opportunity to do all this. Probably poured some of it on the ground as you were chasing the defendant. With those bloodstains out of the way, you entered the house. Now the blade wasn't dropped that far from the entrance, so really. All you had to do was apply the poison then, quick and easy. Oh yeah? Don't you think I should have taken care of the blood on the kid then, too? I couldn't have, known he'd wash it off. But you couldn't afford that because he'd testify to it. If you had a hunch Miss Porter was in the area, killing him would have been a bad move. So really, your best bet was trying to bank on him trying to cover it up himself. And I don't want to generalize, but it was lightly considering his youth. Most children and teenagers tend to avoid responsibility. Speaking from experience, Linus? Yes. Experience with you. Rude! I'm very responsible. I'm almost completely self-sufficient. Getting all your food from my fridge doesn't count as self-sufficient. Anyway, this is sufficient opportunity for you to clear up the trace on the blade. In fact, it might be the sole reason you returned at all. Damn it! Fine, this one goes to you. I ain't down yet. There's more that's gotta break your theory.
Hold it!
That's a good question. Well, what's the big issue here? It's not impossible for you to have known about the poison. Is there outcast really had some huge collection down there. You might have been the one who stole it. And you think I just know what it did? Maybe they told you? We have precedent with them being quite open about it toward Miss Porter. At any rate, there's no real issue here. Was no more of a stretch than any of the rest of your theory. As such, I shall accept this point. This is ridiculous! I didn't know! This one was pretty easy to resolve for a change. What strikes me as more of a point an innocent person would try to make. Is he that good an actor? I'll just see where this leads me. Yeah, that seems like more of a flimsy rebuttal than everything else we've done so far. How did I get confused with the victim?
Hold it!
Right. I guess that's still an issue. An awfully high amount of people seem to have been confused with Mr. Ronos and your theory. Hey, it's only 2. Mysterious corpse lady could have been passed as a man. The problem is the face. And then there's Mr. Cat, who also clearly does not look like the victim. I don't think there's any spell that could disguise a person either. Well, except me combining my face with somebody else's, but let's not try that. Mr. Sky. Oh, hi, Nils. What is it? I've been wondering about it ever since you pointed out Master Ronos' scar. I couldn't trust my memory before, but I think it was wrong. Wrong? Something felt off about the Master Ronos I saw, aside from his behavior. It was the scar. I'm pretty sure the scar was on the wrong side of his face. Curious. So it was really on the left cheek then. But why? I feel like the answer to that should be in what I already know. I know what you're thinking to yourself there. You think I must have worn some disguise, huh? Tough luck, man. You'd have found that sort of thing. According to you, I would have only shown up as myself at the end. Well, if I discarded some disguise somewhere, you'd have found it. Now, let's not forget the tricks he got up his sleeve thanks to a spell. Assuming the disguise was nothing too big, he might have been able to erase most traces of it. He'd have needed to do so after his encounter with the defendant. It must have happened at that corner, when he decided to turn around and show up as himself. Of course, we found no traces of the disguise there. I found this piece of razor, and I thought that the smell of rubber wasn't there. The feeling I've seen something rubber-related mentioned somewhere else. Something that would easily explain what this disguise is. Sure, that could just make a reasonable assumption, but I mean, let's just say it. It's rubber mask.
Take that!
It was an interesting article in the newspaper. Oh, the newspaper? Oh, the fucking Veil de Voix. Sealing his face with rubber masks of several different people. The thief that was recently caught used it to evade being recognized. Are you referring to Veil de Voix? A fairly intriguing case. Do you think there's a connection? Probably not. There's one thing mentioned here that Mr. Cat could have used, too. Rubber mask? Why, it's a pretty easy way to disguise yourself. Depending on how much you've mastered your spell. Chances are you could even have used it to carve out the shape of the victim's shape. Oh. Either way, this makes sense. Shape of the victim's face. Mr. Honest was clearly the intended victim, and this show would have been planned long in advance. In order to make this corpse pass as the victim, we need something like that prepared. The whole thing with the defendant spotting him probably wasn't part of the plan, but most likely had the mask in his hands already after shooting the corpse's real face. In other words, he quickly put it on to not be recognized by my client. The victim's scar was on the wrong side of the face because the mask was actually mirrored. Should be obvious why. The original trick was supposed to be part of a reflection. The scar to be on the correct side of the reflection had to be on the wrong side of the mask. Since the mask was perfect otherwise, the defendant didn't question his identity. Of course, he still couldn't actually talk to the defendant, which led to the whole insane escape. After that, he destroyed the mask with a spell, leaving nothing but the faint smell of scent of rubber behind. That explanation, the issue should be resolved. Seemed to match up quite well. Well enough. I have to give this one up, huh? Can't be serious. Whatever. There's still more. I can still fight. This would be a tough one. One I don't know if we can prove. Motive. I had no connection to the victim. Might not have the highest opinion of him, but would I kill him over that? Probably not. There you go then. I had no reason to do it. This is easily the hardest part right now. I don't think I can give a conclusive answer on this point right now, considering the nature of the victim's work. What was the victim investigating again? Oh, BR1.
Take that!
You had no connection to the victim. This does not mean there is no motive. In fact, your goal might have been to prevent such a connection from being established in the first place. Elaborate. The victim's current main objective was to find the truth behind this case. PR1, the unresolved incident. As you might know, the police were unable to even find a suitable suspect. But they did find out that it must have been a spell user. What kind of spell would be capable of leaving a hole in both the wall and the Great Guardian's barrier? A spell that is capable of splitting anything that comes to mind. Something like unlimited parting. Your spell, Mr. Cat. You're undoubtedly a viable suspect. Nonsense! Where did that come from? Our witness is responsible for that calamity as well? Now you're trying to pin that one on me too? Witness, please be truthful with us. State to the court that you did not do it. Oh, come on. You're not going to believe me anyway. I'm not behind that. Put no holes in the wall. Heck, if you want to be like that, I could ask what my motive for that is. Well, he is telling the truth. As such, the motive isn't viable. Huh. A decision is overruled. Mr. Linus will be permitted a continuation with his hypothesis. But he didn't. The Great Guardian really does want an answer to BR1. Understood, Your Honor. I mean, that's gotta be why he's overruling the infallible prosecutor. I'm not sure what's happening, but I guess it worked? It is apparent that a procurement of a motive is difficult at the moment, while information is lacking and unreliable. As such, this point is currently a minor priority. Neglection is permissible as long as the witness's guilt is still proven beyond a reasonable doubt. Thank you for your understanding, Your Honor. Are you serious? You don't even care why I'd have done such a thing? Wow, ignoring the heart. Not ignoring the motive. But assuming I can prove that you did it, the reason is just an afterthought. For now, I will go with the assumption that you had a connection to the BR1 incident. Whether this is true, can be determined in your own trial. Should it come to that. You gotta be kidding me! This is the fairness of your great judgment hall, huh? To ignore everything you got no answer for. You're exaggerating. As a parent, all objections have been resolved. That's right. My theory should be without major issue now, on a technical level. Just to be safe, I'll recount what I accused the witness of one more time. I think we'll save this for next video.